Hey guys, and welcome to episode 4 of our Journey Through Daniel series. Over this series, we've been walking through Daniel's story and just learning about how he responds to difficult situations that he's put in and how he turns to God in those situations. We've talked about what it looks like to not fall to peer pressure, what it looks like to be influenced by God, what it looks like to have confidence in God. But this week I want to look at a story that you might already know. It's probably one of Daniel's most famous stories, and it's him in the lion's den. And as we talk through this story, I want to talk about how Daniel responds with obedience. With obedience to God. And I know we can hear the word obedience and think it's a bad word. It means that we're giving up our freedom, we're giving up our personal choice, that we're just adhering to rules of a God. But no, what I'm talking about with obedience is what we choose to follow. You see, no matter what, we're all obedient to something. There's something in our life that we value. There's something in our life that we prioritize, and because of that, we're obedient to it. And so I want us to look at how Daniel chooses to be obedient to God in a difficult situation and wonder how we should be doing the same in our own lives. So here's what you need to know. King Darius loved Daniel. Daniel was a good man with integrity, and he lived well, and he was a good leader. And so Darius wanted to give Daniel more power. He wanted to put Daniel over the entire kingdom. But King Darius's administrators didn't like this. They didn't want Daniel, some foreigner, to have power. Even though Daniel was a good man and did good work, no, they were threatened by him. So they tried to find fault in Daniel, but they couldn't. Because Daniel lived with integrity. He lived the way God called him to live, and so they couldn't find anything wrong. So the administrators decided to be crafty. They decided then to find a way to use Daniel's faith against him. To use Daniel's faith in a way that could isolate him and get him out of the administrator's way to power. And so they go to King Darius and they have him decree that for the next 30 days nobody could pray to any gods or any relics or anything, only pray for the king. Only pray to the king for the next 30 days. And King Darius liked this, so he signed this decree and he made it law that for the next 30 days, everyone had to stop praying for their gods and for what they worshipped and to worship the king. And Daniel heard this. Daniel heard this, and I want us to look in Daniel 6, 10 through 12 to better understand exactly how Daniel responded. And here's what it says. It says this. Now when Daniel learned that the decree had been published, he went home to his upstairs room where the windows opened towards Jerusalem. 3 times a day he got down on his knees and prayed, giving thanks to his God, just as he had done before. Then these men went as a group and found Daniel praying and asking God for help. You see, Daniel heard the decree. Daniel heard the decree, and he didn't want to be obedient to it. He didn't want to be obedient to this decree. He didn't want to be obedient to the whims of a king or to soothing the ego of a king or even to the plans of these administrators, because he was obedient to God. And he didn't want to give up that obedience. He didn't want to give up that relationship he had with God just to fit in, just to appease a king, just to be safe. So instead, Daniel chooses to keep praying. He chooses to keep praying to his God, but not to do it secretly, but openly. Because he is not going to change what he is obedient to. He is going to trust in God and continue to pursue him because God is his priority. And of course, the administrators see this as they had planned, and they go and they tell King Darius. But here's what's interesting. King Darius isn't furious. He's actually upset. He really likes Daniel and he doesn't want to hurt Daniel. But the thing you need to know about this decree is that if anyone was found praying to anything other than the king for the next 30 days, they were going to be thrown into a lion's den. And King Darius was so upset about it, and he did everything he could to save Daniel, and he tried to change it. But the thing about a decree is that even though he's the king and he made the decree, he can't change it once it's done. And so, sadly, he had to throw Daniel into the lion's den. They put him into the lion's den and they sealed it up, and the king was up and upset all night, worried about Daniel. But then morning came and the king rushed to the lion's den, and there Daniel was, safe and sound. God had closed the mouths of the lions and he had protected Daniel in that situation, and King Darius was thrilled. He was thrilled. He had Daniel brought out of the lion's den, and then he had the administrators who were trying to get Daniel killed thrown into the lion's den. And I want us to see how King Darius responds to Daniel's obedience to God. And it's in Daniel 6:25-26, and it says this. Then King Darius wrote to all the nations and peoples of every language in all the earth, "May you prosper greatly. I issue a decree that in every part of my kingdom people must fear and reverence the God of Daniel." I think that's awesome. You see, we're reading through Daniel's stories, and I think we're seeing a common theme. Daniel or his friends are being put into difficult situations. Difficult situations where they have to choose the sense of belonging, or have to choose safety, or they have to choose comfort in order to be okay. And they have to choose that above God. But each and every time they're put into these difficult situations, even when their lives are put on the line, they choose God. They choose God instead of falling to peer pressure. They choose God instead of being influenced by others, and in turn, God uses influence for them. Or they choose to be confident in God instead of confident in anything else. But here we see Daniel choose to be obedient to God instead of being obedient to the world, obedient to the expectations of his peers, the expectation of his culture, because he knows they're not right. He knows they're not important. He knows they don't matter as much as God does. And I want us to look at this story because, you see, we might not be thrown into a lion's den, but we're often put in situations where we have to wonder, what are we obedient to? I think I really had to first ask myself this question when I was in high school. I was still new, figuring out my faith. I had been a Christian about 2 years, and I was really into it, and I thought I was devout. But one day, I was hanging out in the hallway with a group of friends at school, none of them Christian as far as I could know, and somehow it came up that I was Christian. And this girl turns to me, and she says, "Ronnie, I had no idea you were a Christian. I never would have guessed. You're so cool. You act like everyone else." And I heard those words, and I was thrilled. I was thrilled. She didn't know I was Christian. She couldn't tell. I was cool. I was just like everybody else. I fit in. And I remember going to small group that Sunday, and in our highs and lows, which I'm sure you do on your Sunday small groups as well, I talked about that as my high, about how somebody found out I was Christian and it surprised them. It surprised them that I was Christian. It surprised them that I knew in God. They would never have guessed. How cool is that I fit in? I'm pretty sure my exact words was, how cool is it that people think I'm just like them? And I remember looking at my small group leader, and she kind of smiled at me, and she didn't say much, but if I remember correctly, she did ask why that's a good thing. And as I thought about it more, I started to recognize something. If it's such great news for me to know that people don't think I'm Christian, what am I prioritizing in my life? What am I obedient to? Am I obedient to the desire of belonging? Am I obedient to the desire of fitting in, of people thinking of me in a certain way? Or am I obedient to living out the life that God has called me to? Am I obedient to sharing who He is and making disciples of all nations? Am I obedient to sharing the gospel when I can and inviting others in to know God? Or am I obedient to belonging to a world that is broken? To systems that don't work? To the expectations that don't matter? And I feel like you need to ask yourself that question too. Because we're all obedient to something. We all prioritize something in our life. There's something that we feel like if we can attain it, if we can have it, if we can pursue it, if we can live by this certain way, we can achieve what we want. And is the way you're choosing to live the way with God? Is God the one you're choosing to be obedient to, or is it things of this world that ultimately don't matter, that are fleeting, like others' opinions or expectations, or some kind of social status that you might want? So here's what I want you to be questioning yourself with today. What does obedience mean to you? And once you figure that out, what are you obedient to? What in your life are you choosing to run after because you feel like it is going to give you what you so desperately want? Instead of choosing to be obedient to God, who already is telling us that we are enough, we are capable, and that we have purpose, and that we have a life worth living, and that a life, if we follow Him, has great purpose and meaning. Now, if you are obedient to God, that's awesome. How can you be better at taking advantage of that? How can you be better at finding ways to live even more obediently? How can you be better at inviting others in and being a good example? There's so many ways that you can think through this. I know we can read through all these stories of Daniel and feel like we don't measure up. But here's what you need to know. Daniel was a human. Daniel had faults, he had flaws, and so do we. But he still understood the importance of turning to God in difficult situations, and he understood the importance in this moment that his safety, his security, even his life was not as important as his relationship with God. And he was obedient to it. So I want you to go into small groups today and really talk about the idea of obedience. What does it mean to you? What does it look like in your life? What are you obedient to? And what do you think needs to change? Or what more do you think you need to do? Because what we've seen throughout these stories with Daniel is that when we choose to turn to God in difficult situations, God will use us to glorify Him. God will use us to do incredible good because Daniel chose to be obedient to God. And the administrators tried to use Daniel's faith against him, but then instead, God used Daniel to influence the world of that time. King Darius sent out a decree that Daniel's God was to be respected and cared for. And I think that's amazing. I think we can pass over that and think, oh yay, Daniel got out of the lion's den. But what's so incredible about his obedience is how God chooses to use that to do so much good, to spread His kingdom farther, to spread His name farther. And that's what He's asking of us. To turn to Him in obedience, to prioritize our relationship with Him, and be open to the opportunities that God is going to place before us to do His good work, to share His name, share His love, and spread His kingdom. So enjoy small group today and talk a little bit about obedience. All right, guys, stay tuned for announcements and then enjoy small group. Well, hey guys, welcome to Impact News. We have quite a few announcements for you today, but first we're going to kick it off with some weather. So what do we got?
It's an exciting day, Ronnie. As I look out the window, I can see it's sunny, it's beautiful. it's a little chill, but it's still a beautiful day. So everything you want to do outside, you can still do, except golf. They're kind of closing up. But anyway, a great day to enjoy outside. Hope you guys get out.
Yeah. Oh, man. It's just amazing, the weather and the fact that this weather joke has not gotten old yet.
Hey, listen, the weather is no joke.
Yes. Well, we have a few announcements for you guys, so we're going to kick it off first with Bible study. What do we need to know about Bible study?
Well, Ronnie, funny you should ask. We are continuing with our Bible study series on Daniel, and that'll happen on Wednesday, 7 to 8:15 as normal. You'll find it on Instagram Live. So be sure to join us for that. One little side note is that we will not be doing any Bible study next week in order to observe Thanksgiving. So that's something to not look forward to.
Yeah. Well, Thanksgiving, I think we could look forward to it. But yes, guys, it is the last week of our Journey Through Daniel Bible study, and then we will kick off a new Bible study after the holidays. And finally, I just want to let you guys know about something that is going on at Southlake called the Thanksgiving Wall. There is a huge canvas mural outside the WSL building with some markers underneath it where you guys can go and write what you are thankful for. And I would just love to encourage you guys to go and participate and just think about what you're grateful for and share it. That's going to be up for the entire month of November. So might as well do it now whenever you find free time. Drive on over there, even draw something. See what feels right.
Sounds like fun.
Oh, yeah. So that's what we have for you guys for announcements today. So we're going to send you on off to small groups. Woo-hoo.
Enjoy.
Yes, this is Impact News. What are we doing?
Signing off.
Yeah.